Hey everybody, this is Perch, and I'm here with Patrick Kindlon. Patrick, you're new to the show. How are you?
I'm feeling great. Thank you. It's 7 a.m. my time, and I hope I'm sharp. I've taken the dog for a walk, got a sweat in as it's 80 degrees here to start the day. I think I'm awake, but no hard questions just yet.
Oh no, you're in beautiful Perth. Is that right?
I am. Have you ever been?
Absolutely. I love Australia. I love Perth.
It's not a popular destination for Americans. It doesn't seem. I meet a lot of South Africans and a lot of Scots, but not a ton of Americans. It is beautiful for people that are interested. It feels like the exact middle point between San Diego and North Carolina. So for anybody that's interested in that energy, come on down.
Okay, that leaves a lot to the imagination there. But no, Perth is beautiful. I've had some great times, good drinking nights in Perth for sure.
No, it's so I moved here for my girlfriend as a this family guy with kind of no motivation. I don't know anybody here besides my girlfriend. No motivation to really leave the house, and I've become I'm getting a touch strange. Like when you say, yeah, there's, like maybe there's good bars or whatever. I would have no idea. I go to the dog beach, you know what I mean? But I'll take your word for it.
A touch strange. Okay, so you work in comics then, for sure.
Yeah, I do in fact. Allegedly, it's hard to tell who actually works in comics and who says they do. We can talk about that.
We definitely should. Well, before we get into anything else, let's hit the important topic of the day. You have a Kickstarter that's live right now as you're listening to this, and there's still time to get in. Tell us about what you got.
Okay, so I'm going to give it to a good salesperson would tailor a pitch to the audience, right? That just makes sense. So I'm going to lead with the fact that there's full penetration.
Okay. All right. You've nailed our audience well. Perfect.
Well, here's what I would say. So a number of years ago, my co-creator Maria and I wanted to do a book that was mature in the colloquial meaning of the word, not comic shop meaning of the word, right? So just a book that kind of inspired by Vertigo titles, but more inspired by the girls who used to read Anne Rice books when I was in high school.
Okay. Yeah.
You might remember that energy when Anne Rice was like omnipresent, and every young person with a goth haircut was reading Anne Rice. And I thought, I don't see that person in comic stores very often anymore. I don't see the Sandman reading woman as often as I used to.
Right. That's true.
And Maria and I sat down and said, what's a book that we could, kind of do for that person? And we did a book called There's Nothing There. And it's a horror book, has a few adult scenes, but it's not explicitly adult at all. But it's without being too clumsy, I hope, it's about being watched. It's about and kind of how people aspire to that, but it's very uncomfortable when you're there, Right. And the book didn't do great. It's a Black Mask book, and it was kind of off-brand for what they were doing at the moment, and didn't do gangbusters, but got a great response from the people that actually did read it. And then over the years, there's been, I don't want to call it a cult classic or whatever, but there's been a nice, consistent kind of stream of people telling us, why don't you do more of this? And Maria, to her credit, in some degrees has. She's gone on to work with Azzarello, right? On Faithless is their book. And she's done some great stuff, solo creator owned work. And that leans mature too. And but we haven't had an opportunity to really revisit exactly this same type of energy. And then Black Mask approached me and said, "Hey, we're thinking about doing some of our books that maybe are tailored for someone other than a traditional DM comic reader. We're thinking about doing them on Kickstarter. Is that something that's cool by you or not? Would you like to be involved?" And I said, "What's the motivation to go Kickstarter?" And for people that don't know Matt of Black Mask, and this might be a thing that some of your viewers have some misconception about. He put out what a lot of people would call woke books or whatever. He did that because I'm going to ruin this for him. He saw that as the transgressive, challenging thing to do at that moment.
Gotcha.
He's a straight up Faust guy. Do you know what I mean? Like
okay. Yeah.
He is a black and white comics boom. He doesn't give a shit about big two stuff. Doesn't even know what half of it is. But he's a guy that he's like a life troll. I call him that all the time. He just wants to do the thing that is challenging to that moment, right? So things being what they are, sex books are not in. Now they are in on Kickstarter, and we could talk about that. Boob books are in on Kickstarter. Mm-hmm. Sex books are not necessarily in, but boob books are. But we did a sex book. We took There's Nothing There, and this is a continuation of it called Don't Avert Your Eyes. Everybody can look that up on Kickstarter. And it is set in the same world after the events of There's Nothing There. You don't have to have read There's Nothing There, but I would urge you to pick up that particular goal. But it is it's explicit, and I didn't realize that I was going too explicit because I'm a difficult guy to offend, But it's explicit, and it's a few different stories with artists who are I gotta call them fearless. And nobody felt a way about some of the direction that I gave in my scripts, which was, I don't know, but I would say butt plug, dildo, your choice, whatever, you know what I mean? And nobody felt any
options,
Yeah, right. Nobody felt a way about it. And part of that, and this is a larger conversation that we don't have to have now, but part of that is that these broadly, some of these artists have worked in print, and maybe some of your viewers would recognize them. But there's a number of the artists that I worked with for this project who don't value traditional print comics in the way that you and I do. It's a completely different. It's a completely different world. And Kickstarter is its own world, which is the thing I'm finding most fascinating. Pat Shand, a guest on your show in the past, and one of the most I mean this in a good way, entrepreneurial men in comics. Because there's people I would attach that tag to, and I'd mean it as a negative. but this is a fellow who has made his own way, and you can't say that about the ass kissers. You know what I mean? You can't say that about the people that did it within a system. So Pat has really been kind of the guiding light on this, and he's managed to make it quite successful. We got as of the time of this recording, we got 10 days left, and we're at 17 and a half about. And we didn't know what to expect. We thought, okay, let's do our best. Let's clear 8. You know what I mean? Let's clear 8 so we can cover costs. Let's clear, et cetera. And so to maybe hit 20 before this thing ends will be a nice proof of concept. What I'm most engaged with is not the number or not the money earned, but the backer count. I'm fascinated by the backer count. It looks like we're going to hit 500 today probably. And that's a great feeling because that's a nice base. There's a lot to Kickstarter that is kind of arcane. It's interesting how people that have run 10 campaigns have it very dialed in. They have it down to a science, and everybody else is running around like a chicken with their head cut off, no idea what to do. And that was me. So I'm grateful that Pat Shand was able to make sense of these things, and had, shout out to him. But happy with the way it's going. For your audience, which I imagine is a lot of people like myself, and might need a pitch that isn't, hey, this is meant for Vertigo girls. This is good comics that also happens to not have any hangups about depicting adult situations. It's a horror comic, but you're not. I should have put this in the. Yeah, I should have put, because this is relevant to some people. I don't believe, so they've basically debunked trigger warnings, right? Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of people who would just like an assurance. You're not going to see any like sexual violence in this or anything like that. It's just a lot of sex and it's horror. And I understand where some people would think, oh, I don't want to wander. I don't want to wander into that shit. But it is, if you are comfortable with adults having sex, do not think you're going to have any issue with this, and you're also probably going to enjoy it.
The preview art has lots of strategic Kickstarter logos over the bit, so you know what you're in for. But I like the one. So it's horror, it's erotica, it's uncensored.
And look, this is I'm a DM guy to the degree that my brain doesn't work right. Like there's opportunities that I don't take advantage of because I'm stuck in a comic shop mentally. That's a space that I love. I don't just like, how every creator has to go through the fucking motions of saying they love comic shops when in fact they might not have been in one in a couple of years. I actually, many times, yeah. The most comfortable place for me is a food co-op. That's like, you got the old hippies, you got the nutritional yeast. There's a weird comfort in that, right? And the only thing that comes close is a comic book shop where some guy's listening to metal. And that and that is, those are the two places that I am most at peace. So I'm a comic shop guy, but that said, right now adult material has booms and busts, right? And it's never massive, right? But there's there was Eros Comics for years that would your book could at least see shelves, right? And that's not really the case anymore. The books that we think of as being adult, no disrespect to these creators at all, but they're not really adult. They're cheesecake, or they're teas, or they're, what I mean? And there's nothing wrong with that. People love it, right? Like, so Lady Death. Lady Death's cool. It's a cool character. That's fun. There's nothing explicit about Lady Death, really. No, you know what I mean?
It's a different level. That's kind of lightweight what you would get in manga. It's comparing like a manga book with some cheesecake, some nudity to, Overfiend, which is a whole different level of what's going on. And so I'm with you.
At some point, we're going to have to talk about the impact that Overfiend had on 16-year-old minds. We had the VHS, and it was an eye-opening experience. But I believe, and I could be wrong, but right now the numbers are encouraging. I believe that there is an audience that would like adult books, is not afraid of adult books, but perhaps either doesn't rely. These people do not rely on comic shops anymore to make those purchases, or maybe they don't feel comfortable going into a comic shop. We have to acknowledge that like, even if something you don't think is wrong or weird, you can still feel weird walking by, like a family to buy your adult book, right? Like, so
I totally agree. And having run a shop, first of all, I think comic shops don't really know anymore what to do with adult books. And I think you're right. It's come and gone over the years. Right. We're definitely in a cycle where if a primary source of your income is Funko Pop, it's hard to reconcile the audience coming in for those with somebody coming in for, something that is more uncensored, more adult in nature. It's hard as a store owner. And I think I got burned by this. I know several other people have as well who run shops where you're not really sure of the rules. So you order something and then it's like, am I supposed to keep it behind the counter? If I'm keeping it behind the counter, then how's anybody going to know it's there? How do I even market this? It's more trouble than it's worth. So I'm glad. I mean, I like that Black Mask is doing this on Kickstarter. It makes sense. One of the things I've talked about a lot is it's not bad to wander outside of the DM in order to grow your audience. It's a good thing.
And Black Mask, Matt, who's in charge over there, he worked a comic shop job for years. He still loves comic shops, even if he has frustrations as a publisher, like they all do, with comic shops at times. So he would like to see these books in comic shops eventually, but in terms of single issues, it's a really tall order, honestly, to get a quality quality series of adult books to market. A thing that I see in the comments occasionally of your channel and other channels is oh
my God, you read the comments.
Well, is people who don't understand the margins on comics. And, look, if you are Wednesday Warrior Big 2 guy, the margins stay the same, but the company's ability to absorb losses is infinitely higher. Right, So if you are a small company, you only win by taking risks, but you also die by taking risks. So there is things like adult book, bringing an adult book to market. I think that Black Mask is being smart about this. It's, hey, let's hit people where they purchase this particular type of book, and then if we can get it to the point that the DM wants it, then they have a Diamond account that they'll go put it in Diamond and hopefully see a few more sales. But
makes sense.
It's I think, and I could be wrong. I work in all types of books. My books for Image are not explicit at all. They're the superhero books. You know what I mean? They're maybe they're a little explicit for superhero books, but the point is that it's not nothing adult, quote unquote, right? But I believe, having now seen the numbers on these Kickstarter, that there is a space and a market for example, if you wanted to do the what's the name, Osterhaus, the erotic thrillers of the 90s. You know what I mean? If you wanted to do a Basic Instinct. And what I'm really curious about, having now seen this, is I'm curious when the more Hollywood-minded creators start doing their kind of erotic thriller books outside the DM. I'm curious, because I think the erotic thriller as a genre will probably come back, not in theaters, but I think it might have a resurgence in streaming and whatever. And
I'd agree, yeah.
And as you know, there is because we just had a moment, right? Like, so the Me Too era kind of people didn't even people that were doing everything the right way didn't want to be wrapped up in anybody's negative impressions of them, right? So anything with explicit sex, etc., kind of had to go through the eye of a needle, right? To make sure that I think that exiting the kind of anxieties that people had during that moment, we're probably going to see a resurgence of things like the erotic thriller. And as you know, there's always going to be a comic guy who thinks that I've hacked Hollywood. I've figured it out. And so I'm curious, but I don't begrudge them, because I think this would be a great space to do that. Like, I'd love to do like a proper erotic thriller, no horror elements eventually. And I believe that by selling the sex parts on Kickstarter, you could deliver a really high quality project. And I don't want to just I don't want to talk at you, but the last element that I'd like to mention is I think it's fascinating. So I work with a number on my Image books, on my DM books. I work with a number of Europeans, and they don't have the hangups necessarily that Americans do about depicting sex. There's not like the puritanical sort of energy that we still sometimes have in the U.S. But they've been scared from doing adult work or promoting adult work in the United States, because, having talked to some of them about it, they say that, they're in their Discords just like American creators are. They're in their chats. I think they use WhatsApp there, right? And they scare each other because there's allegedly lists. There's lists of creators that hey, this we don't want this guy's past blowing up on us because his work in adult books is too strong. Whatever. I don't know if that list exists, but the fact that it's whispered about is enough to. Sometimes the reality of a thing doesn't matter. You know what I mean? It's like the market, right? It's bull market, bear market. It's all speculation on, is that real? So I think that we have to get away from that. And we are. Some of the really brilliant female European artists get a little bit more latitude in that. They'll do adult work in Europe, and then their American work is and I think that's, again, that might have something to do with Me Too anxieties, right? Like, as we feel more comfortable with women as the face of certain things, and as has been discussed on your show, the big publishers don't know how to navigate those waters, right? So everything is safety, and we can talk about that because I know politics are like such a big conversation.
Who doesn't love it? Yeah.
Well, I have very strong feelings on the use of the word politics for what the average comic creator is pushing out in the world, which is really just platitudes. But the thing is that I think that we're going to be moving away from some of the inhibitors that we've had, like, right? Because let me do my little bullshit, like, hey, everybody has to say the following, which is, obviously nobody wants bad actors out there. Nobody wants like dangerous men and scumbags exploiting you. Nobody wants that. But kind of to watch media, to watch art get embroiled in a thing where it's like, hey, we're depicting fictional scenarios over here. I understand why your real life concerns are valid and important, but that can't bleed over into what's reaching the page, what's reaching the screen, because once we start to censor ourselves on that level, it's collective punishment. We're hurting ourselves because of something that a bad man did that has nothing to do with me. You know what I mean? So
completely, and it has wrapped up a lot of different people. I mean, you saw the Spider Woman illustration, where she's, and that just got everybody riled up. So it is a problem. We've seen artists from DC and Marvel go and do stuff for Penthouse Comics back in the day, and you're right, there are lists. I mean, there are absolutely, and I think it gets to a point where the publisher. And you said, well, it doesn't want to take any risk. So it's a risk reward benefit. And it's like, does this person even have the slightest hint of where somebody could get upset? Okay, we'll just move on to the next artist down the line. And in that regard, the publishers are viewing a lot of the creators, writers, and artists as a kind of a replaceable commodity. And we're losing some good talent in that mix.
I don't know if I consider George Takei a great talent, but I'm going to tell a George Takei story real quick. Apropos of what you just said. A friend of mine works in television, we'll say, and he was asked after screening the latest thing that he had to do. They don't call it screening in television, whatever the hell. He sends a link to his bosses. They said, could you cut George Takei? And he says, sure. Why? He's on screen for less than 10 seconds. Is it a time issue or something? And they said, no, we think he was involved in something, but we don't remember what. And so I just like, that's how risk averse some corporations are. That, by the way, that the corporation in question is one that everybody here is familiar with. And that's how, think about how risk averse that is. We don't know what this gentleman did, but we kind of half remember that he might have done something. So yes, when these European artists told me, I'm nervous about these lists. I didn't know what to make of it, but it makes sense that they do exist. I don't particularly, for myself, I don't worry about that. Respectfully, to everybody that I'm going to be talking about right now, I at this exact juncture, not that the phone's ringing off the hook anyway, but at this exact juncture, I wouldn't be very interested in working for Marvel. I can't make sense of what I don't understand their vision, right? That would be the way to put that.
I'm not sure they do either.
Yeah. Well, right. And here's the thing. Very early in my comics career, I met CB, and he was as magnanimous a guy as you would hope for, because there was a fellow that was equal to him in kind of their level at the company, executiveship or whatever the hell he was at the time, who I thought was as disrespectful and a turd as I ever met in my life, right? And CB was the opposite. He was Mr. Handshake, Mr. like make the young creators feel comfortable, make them feel like they had potential. And so I still respect him, and I don't have anything bad to say about him. But I don't know what pressure is on him, right? So like a thing that comes up on this channel and other channels is, what are editors doing, right? And that's a real question. It's valid. But the thing that we'll never know is the pressure coming from above, right? If you're getting squished from above and you still, I can slam a lot of mainstream creators for what I consider gutless behavior, right? But I also have other jobs. I work 4 jobs. So like I don't want to say I'm safe, because things could, we're about to hit a recession most likely, and anything can happen. But if I lose a job, I have another job, and it's okay. But if you are an editor and that's your full-time work, and you don't know how your skills will transfer to other industries, you have a mortgage, or you have just had a child or whatever, I'm very sympathetic to like why people get trapped in gigs that they don't have the latitude to do something great, right? I'm very sympathetic, but I don't know what pressures are on CB. I don't know what pressures he applies to editors beneath him, right? And
you look at those companies. One way of looking at it, it's understandable. It doesn't necessarily make you feel warm and fuzzy inside, but CB's job, you kind of referred to it. He was trying to rehab kind of the face of the company at the executive level for people, and he does a good job of that. Like you said, he's very friendly. Everybody I've met, and I've met CB a few times, it's always you come away with a happy feeling, because he's good at that. But the company mandate, and I think DC's in the same place, and maybe to some extent even Image. I mean, DC and Marvel are cranking out 70 to 80 books a month. And so you have to look at that and go, is the mandate coming down, hey, do great books, solicit great talent, get, create these uniquely crafted stories that people are going to remember forever? Or is it, get 80 books out the door relatively on time? Those are very different goals.
100%. And sometimes the low bar of making the trains run on time is corporate success. Yeah, you know what I mean. And it's difficult for those of us that are really engaged with maybe the craft of comics, the art of comics, that to appreciate that it's not an easy job to have to spin 80 plates. It's not easy, right? So but this is all to say, I don't worry about my own career, because I don't have the same ambitions as some people. I have a bit more understanding of what I think DC was going for a while, and still might be. I've taken more meetings with both, but I've taken more meetings with them, and editor to editor, I've had good experiences and like them. But this is to say that Marvel I wouldn't work for, DC I would. Neither's calling me currently. But I'm not. I don't have the anxieties about not working for them, I guess is the way I would put it.
And that hangs a bunch of people up. But
it kills. Listen, again, I'm going to use the word respectfully. There are a lot of creators who do not realize that they will never, ever get that phone call, and that it is better to pursue your own path and to do your own thing to enrich your family's lives and create good art, and to not get hung up on branding that, respectfully, was relevant in the 1980s and increasingly less so.
I agree. And I mean, and it just kind of bringing it back around to the adult topic, it is a minefield. And so one just kind of tiny example. So Norm Brayfogle is one of the, legendary Batman artists. I think and honestly, as legendary as he is, kind of also underrated. Oh, for sure. I agree. I mean, and he died a few years ago. Definitely left a mark on Batman. Was one of those artists that you instantly recognized. I do agree. He hasn't had the big name that he should have. But so Norm did some work for, I think, Penthouse Comics and did some adult stuff. Not a lot, but a little bit. And I think in the grand scheme of things, I mean, if we're rating it on a scale of kind of cheesecake to Overfiend, it's probably a little closer to cheesecake than Overfiend.
Yeah, sure.
But DC wouldn't call him back. I mean, and this is one of the legendary DC artists, and it was hard to watch this guy who had a career and have the big two both kind of say, no, it's not worth the risk because of this thing that nobody saw. I mean, those Penthouse comics didn't sell at all, but still. See,
this is a lot of creators have their moment where what do you call it? The road to Damascus, right? They have their moment where they're struck off their horse and they realize, holy shit, what have I done? Right? Like, how have I been so wrong? I was hoping, because my comic career took a long time. It was I started with Matt Rosenberg as your favorite writer, as my as my co-writer, and we set a goal. We said everybody says this takes 10 years, but we're starting late. Let's see if we can't shave some time off of this. And had a bit of a plan. We still fumbled around in the dark quite a bit, but but because it took me 10 years, took him far less, took him like 6 years, 5 years, something like that. It took me 10 years to I went to, what was that? Before the pandemic, I went after years of like doing this, the song and dance that all small creators do. I went to San Diego. I had a meeting with Image and a meeting with DC, and they both said I have a book. And I was after 10. It was almost 10 years to the day. You know what I mean? Like it was, and I was really excited. Now everything imploded at DC. I got no book, but it was a nice. Obviously it feels good. And to be frank, I'm sure I would have enjoyed doing a DC book, and it would have been nice for a career and all that stuff. But I don't know how to describe this to people without being schmaltzy or emotional. Calling the shots is awesome. And my Image work with my co-creator, Marco, and I also do another book there with Maurizio, and I've got an OGN coming out with a brilliant creator, Paul. It's truly unmitigated. Now, granted, there's not explicit sex in it, so perhaps if I cross certain lines, I would have to. There might be S&P on certain things, right? And certainly, Image has had to pump the brakes on certain things, I'm sure, in their time as a publisher. But for me to not have to answer to somebody, I'm not here to lecture anybody or tell anybody how to navigate their career. As obviously, many people watching this have much better careers than I do, but it's awesome not having to deal with somebody stepping on your dick. It's just much better. So
avoid having people step on your dick.
Yeah, if possible. This is the only life advice I can give. But
that'll be the title of this video. Perfect.
Yeah, but this is all. This was all to say that the hang-ups that a lot of people have about will my career move forward if I do X, Y, or Z. The only advice that I feel capable of giving is that if you are a self-starter that does good work, your career may not go the direction that you anticipated, particularly if you want to do like Walt Disney Comics and oops, I just spent 10 years doing Penthouse Comics and now Disney won't call me. Look, do your Destroyer Duck. You know what I mean? Do your I have this is a bizarre thing, by the way. I'm buying a house as soon as humanly possible. I just moved to Perth and we're renting it, and I'm buying a house as soon as humanly possible because that I cannot afford, because I hate that they will not let you hang things on your wall. I hate it. Makes me insane. Like the rules that they have for renters, like we have a nice home. It's not a slumlord. And they will not let you hang things on the wall. But anyway, when I can hang things on my new office and my new home that I cannot afford, the Wally Wood Disney print is the first thing I'm putting, because now who wants Wally Wood's career? Maybe a young man that doesn't understand the pain of what that man went through and thinks that there's something just something to lionize in type of like a tragedy, right? Maybe that's the person that would want Wally, but most people would not. Most people would prefer to have a long life and a nice family and then Wally Wood's career. But the hey, I'm at the end of my rope, fuck you element of Wally Wood's career is something to emulate in my view. Maybe you don't want to implode, but do your Disney. You know what I mean? Do your, which people that don't know what I'm referring to, Google Wally Wood Disney.
Yeah, but that's a great story. That's a video in itself. But I love it. So you have to. I mean, at the end of the day, if you're going to create work, people are going to. I believe that people will smell if you're not doing something that is true to you, or it's you have no passion for it. The work. And that's kind of, I think, the criticism there. People find a lot of different ways to critique the big two right now.
Right.
But I think it's a lot of words that maybe boil down to the same thing. As I think there's a lot of comics being produced there at times that are done by people who are, they want to work there. It's not what they really want to be doing. And it shows in the work.
Well, I think there's a few things happening, and I've tried to put my finger on this because for a while there, I was absorbing as many different commentaries on comics as I could find. You know, I was watching guys with 100 views, and I was reading tweets from like bona fide lunatics, and just trying to absorb what everybody, what everybody was saying about everything. Why is there? Who is the majority of people? Is everybody insane currently? And by the way, I find the most honest. I find the most honest place to be the comment sections of pirate sites. I think that's the most honest place.
It's funny. So I totally agree. So definitely don't recommend that and everything else. But putting that aside for the moment, you're absolutely right. The comments are the unvarnished good and bad.
Yep.
People don't go to the pirate site just to bitch about they're in there telling you what they actually think.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, a lot of lunatics, but there's no clout associated with saying something there. There's no social benefit to saying the funny thing, to saying the socially acceptable thing, which is what we see on the YouTube. We see people go towards sunlight, right? Like whatever's feeding me, I go towards that. I continue to do that, and I hammer on that. And on Twitter, you see the same thing, right? And you know, there's a lot of, I'm not saying anything original here, but of all the negative aspects of Twitter, the gamification of conversation should be seen as a net negative and really, really pernicious, because you are, without making a scandal, was a thing in the last couple days that comics. All right.
Are they dying? Don't say they're dying.
No. The comics are. It was an interpersonal problem that was playing out on social media.
Okay.
And
Warren Ellis related. I got it. Yeah.
No, but we can talk about that one. But it was some people felt jerked by a creator, et cetera, whatever. And I don't even care about the details of it. But what was interesting was a few people made it their persona for a few days to talk about nothing else, to do nothing else, to breathe nothing else, to probably didn't sleep. And that's because the feedback that they were receiving was positive enough. It was the most attention that this person had received. I looked at their timeline. You go from zero engagement to, hey, I'm hammering this one subject over and over again, and each one of these is getting successively more and more attention. I'm going to continue doing this.
For sure.
And if you're watching from the outside, that person looks like a child. But if you're in that moment, everybody is susceptible to this, right? Because that's what Twitter is. It's gamified your dialogues. It's made it so here's a reward for saying a thing that this audience may agree with, right? And the reward, you can't cash in for anything. There's no money on the other side of it. Although we can talk about how some have. That we could talk about how there is as much as I might shit on this type of kind of angling and this way of navigating your career, when Twitter was dying, you see the big finger quotes I'm doing, when there was that anxiety, which was frightening to watch, by the way, really scary to watch 40-year-olds scream about a thing that they couldn't possibly understand or have any insight into, and act like it would be the end of the world in any circumstance. It's not the end of the world, fellas. If Twitter goes away,
I was overseas when this was happening, and I'm kind of, I don't remember. It was a weird time of day because I was overseas from the US, and to watch the weird meltdown of the site's only got minutes left, and we're writing a eulogy. It was bizarre, thoroughly bizarre to see it happen.
And look, I saw Greg Pak, right? Pak.
Don't ask me. Yeah.
So, no disrespect to that gentleman. I don't know him, and he's done some good work. A capable writer, of course. And when he was seemingly having a moment because he makes a good amount of his money off of Twitter, and he's able. So on Kickstarter, you can see the analytics. You can see where the streams. You can see how these things arrived to your Kickstarter, right? What link was followed to get there. And he gets the greatest engagement from his Twitter, which makes sense because he's a notable. He's done work that people care about, and he can direct people directly to the space where they can now give him money. And that's awesome, to be honest. That's like he's created a pipeline for himself, and Palminotti and all these guys who, the phone stopped ringing. I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do, which is I'm going to do it myself. And a big respect to that. But his anxiety, I understand, right? Because he can money makes sense. Like, people don't want to talk about money, but there's a Bobby Fischer line, right? And listen, Bobby Fischer isn't somebody you should pattern your life after. But when he said, it's not about the money. The money just equals respect. That's one way to look at money. Another way to look at money is, if I don't have it, my children die. You know what I mean? And
for sure. I mean, it turns out you need it. It's crazy. You need it.
Yeah. So whether you see it as respect or you see it as, my children are going to be taken away from me because I can't feed them. Regardless of which ones you see it as, there's no reason that we shouldn't talk about money. It's relevant, right? So for Greg Pak, I got why he was looking at the potential death of Twitter. Again, he should have just been a little bit more incredulous and examined what exactly was taking place. But let's say that you don't have time for that. Let's say that you're a person that's processing information. I prioritize what I take into my life, and I don't have knowledge on half the things that I don't have a full knowledge of half the things that come into to my purview, right? Nobody could. So let's say he didn't take the minute to simply Google what is actually happening in Twitter. But if you thought that, oh shit, a quarter of my income could go away in an instant, you know what I mean? You would feel a way about that. Anybody would. But the people that I did not understand are the people that said, you know, this is where I'm supposed to meet people to get my career off the ground, and this, that, and the other thing. And that has worked for some people. I wouldn't advise it. You know what I mean?
I agree. And that's one of those things that indexes hard on YouTube. I think a lot of it, there is these notable stories of people meeting on Tumblr, or meeting on Twitter, and that's where the career came from. And you're right, there are a few. They don't tend to work out well, though. It's in the moment, you may have a short career, but a lot of those people have not lasted. Well, and it's not healthy.
There's a lot of, look, this is going to transition us into a conversation about kind of how people get hired, and that's the most touchy subject in the world. But I don't think it has to be. I think it's like money. It can be a thing that can just be discussed in plain terms, and people can make their own value judgments independent. So the thing that's come up is, why are there a lot of seemingly incapable writers, particularly, although I have some issues with some of the artists being hired at like, I've picked up issues of Marvel books in the last few years that I was pretty fucking appalled by the art. And I'm not talking about stylistic choices, right? Like Riley Rosmo got hammered for that Robin book, right?
I didn't notice. Yeah.
Right. And nobody would say Rosmo's not a gifted artist. He very clearly is. Is he the right choice for that book? Well, it's a matter of very different question. And,
by the way, just to pinpoint on that, because there's a lot of people, I say in jest, but there's a lot of people back. So there's a new issue dropped, and so a lot of people. I'm not a fan of that art style, but there is a commitment to that art style from Riley. Like you look panel to panel, the art style does not just randomly shift from panel, but he is giving you his style.
He's also he's dialed that in. He didn't look exactly like that when he started his career. This is a thing that he is. This is what he wants to do. And look, like I asked you not to before we started. I said, "Perch, please don't make me pronounce anybody's last name. I'm so bad at it." Chris Bacalo, right?
Bacalo, yeah.
Bacalo 2022 does not. I'm not respectfully to a American master, right? Like he is as good as comics have had, mainstream comics. He is high level creative talent.
Yep.
His 2022 work is not for me.
Yeah.
And however, that's something that's intentional. It's not intentional to lose me, but his work is his work, and I respect that. Same thing with Rosmo. But I forgot my point. I got lost on.
Well, I mean, I'll throw another example that will probably make people cringe when I say this, but Walt Simonson evolved his style to something very stylistic. I happen to love it, but there were a decent amount of people for Simonson, Mignola, that people hated that style. It was very purposeful, and I think it's very different to say, a creator like that, including Rosmo, of Scotty Young, people who have a very distinctive look. Compare that to some of the art that comes out where there is no distinctive look, and that was, I think, your point. You were getting.
Thank you. Yes, you maintain a point much better than I do. I know why you work in consulting, and I hide in a room. That's true. Somebody who has a style that doesn't fit me at this moment, right? But as you said, it is their style, and they earned it. They've put the work in to arrive, and this is their vision. That's different than a low quality artist, right? Yeah, and this is an insensitive comment, but when people say art is subjective, I ask them if engineering is an art. They'll typically say it is, yeah. And I'll say, is Voyager a good space shuttle? And they'll say, I guess. And then I'll say, is Challenger a good space shuttle? And
Wow.
and that's to say that there's the platonic ideal, but there is also just, we can be honest with ourselves what works and what doesn't. If something is failing and it's quite obvious that it is an artistic failure, that it is then a storytelling failure, whatever it is, let's not be dumb. Let's not pretend that we can't objectively say, look, this doesn't work, right? So there's a difference there. But I have this is all getting back to hiring practices, which is such a controversial issue, right? And always the subject. And look, I'm here to pump my books and my Kickstarter, but I want to. I know when I listen to your show, I like when people give a little red meat. So I'm going to give. I'm going to give I'll just give them.
And then we're going to get your opinions on Amber Heard.
Okay. We got to pump those ratings.
Yeah.
So the hiring practices at the big two, but certainly other publishers as well, right? Is a lot of people are frustrated by it, and I get it, right? Because the books are not particularly satisfying to me broadly. There's always a couple good ones, but broadly, I haven't been able to engage with a big two book in a sincere, open-hearted, I'm interested in this way, in too long, right? In like a sort of sad amount of time. And I still check out things when they're germane to what I'm doing or whatever. But it's tough, right? And everybody puts that down to the creative talent. And I do too, because I think that those people have to have the integrity that if they're in a situation where they can't do good work, they have to find a way to exit that, because your job here is not to do work. In my view, your job is to do good work. So if somebody's prohibiting you from doing good work, that happens. Also, you could be in a bad place. It could be you. It could be a bad fit. You know what I mean? There's a million reasons why something wouldn't gel and wouldn't have it. And it's just up to you to exit that circumstance before you embarrass yourself, which sometimes, look,
easier said than done sometimes.
Yeah, 100%. And with the sympathies that we have towards people that got to feed their families, et cetera, et cetera. But the hiring practices of why are they getting creators that don't seem to care about the work? I have a separate thought. I don't think you're wrong, because I don't know if they all do care about the work, but a separate thought is I believe that some of them come from backgrounds where there are completely different artistic backgrounds, writing backgrounds, where there's a completely different set of values, and they are applying those same values to mainstream comic book work in a way that doesn't necessarily hit. And so a good example in meeting a lot of artists, not just the ones I worked with, but meeting a lot of artists for these Kickstarter projects that I'm doing, they don't value the same things, period. And that's not a value judgment on my part. They would tell you, like, for example, there are really talented artists who only draw OCs. I didn't even know what a fucking OC was until this year. And for your listeners who are my age or older, who don't know what a fucking OC is, OC just means original character. And for a segment of the internet, that's interesting. The characters don't do anything. They don't engage in stories. They don't tell you anything about the world through character interactions. It's almost like a dress-up thing, like a doll thing.
Yeah, pure illustration. Yeah,
and that's alien to me. I don't understand it. There's characters with cool designs, and I can appreciate that, but it doesn't mean anything to me, and couldn't hold my attention for very long, right? Like a Frazetta piece, right? Like you look at it, that's just cool until you look at it, and then you say there's a story taking place in every goddamn painting, right? Every illustration, and there is a story captured in a single panel, single frame, a single illustration, but OCs don't have that. OCs often exist in a void, just a white background, and it's this is my OC, right? And there's artists of great talent who are working exclusively in that sphere for $300 a pop, and doing one a day, and that is what they are doing to feed their families. They're getting paid via PayPal just from people that like their work. And let's be honest, if we're not going to criticize the living shit out of a Marvel artist doing hack work there, how can we possibly be mad at, OC Goku 254? You know what I'm saying? Like how can we be mad? And but it's an adjustment for me personally, because it's not what I grew up in, right? But
yeah,
this is the point: is that there's creators working at the big two, and people make it about the Teeny Howards of the world, who seem to have like a more of an interest in fantasy and stuff like that, and they say they focus on the Teeny Howards. I've never met Teeny. She might be a nice person, and I haven't read all of her work. Maybe some of it's good, but what I will say is that you got to apply that energy of being angry at Teeny equally to these screenwriters who are coming with a completely different sensibility than comics and getting hired just as frequently. Not the same names over and over again, but there's always some moonlighting television writer working for Marvel or DC.
Who clearly doesn't belong there. I agree. I agree entirely. And I don't know why. This is one of the mysteries, if you're kind of listening up the big confusions over the last 10 years, of the big two constantly go back to people who are clearly writing for the wrong genre. They don't match at all. The work shows it. The sales are not that good. They never last long. And everybody gets kind of pissed off and they go. But 10 years later, it's like, why are you still going back to this hiring strategy? It's a terrible plan.
Well, a thing that I don't think that they realize, because comic creators only you got to be Mark Waid to say your piece, right? This is a gross thing about comics, is people could say what they fucking want about Mark Waid. Mark Waid, good goddamn writer, by the way, but people can say what they want about him. One thing you got to respect about him is that when he says some shit, whether it's dumb or fucking insightful, he said it because he couldn't help himself, right? And he has enough confidence that he'll build his parachute on the way down. That because he jumps out the window on shit, right? Like, and he'll be on some "fuck you, I'm not doing this. Fuck you, I know what my value is." Shit, right? And you got to respect that, because a lot of creators never say their piece, and they live these lives of quiet desperation. And particularly the big two fellas that, like, editors, I need you to understand this. Every single person who has devoted time and energy and their life to being good at writing comics does not respect your choice of hiring screenwriters who are moonlighting and just fucking dipping their toe in something. It makes people look at you as an editor a little differently. And you will never hear that from somebody that works for you, because they're scared of you. And they know that editors, and again, look, I only can say this because if I worked at one of these companies, it would be because the opportunity was cool, and it was like, I send DC, like, I'll get through to DC once a year and say, here's the thing I was thinking of, and they'll say, oh, we can probably do that as a short, and I'll go, maybe some other time. You know what I mean? Like, and it's like, so I don't look. I'm just going to speak truth here and say, your people fear that you're going to be petty, and they fear that they're going to be blocked out of something because of your picadillos, your personal problems as an editor, meaning that you don't like this guy, right? Which is so fucking stupid. Like, I work in music and I work in video games, and I don't like anyone. And
perfect.
And I'm telling you, actually, I like my current video game job. Everybody's cool, but like I've had positions where, and certainly in music, where, oh, I don't, you're so good at this. Like a good example would be bands. I don't like every band I've toured with. You know what I mean? Like, but if somebody is worth tickets and good at their fucking thing that they do, we can keep it cordial and just it's a hello at the Sabra and Tostitos table in the green room. It's a hello. We don't have to get married because you have a specific talent that you're bringing to the table. And
it's a level that 30 people struggle with, though. And you are right, by the way. The fear exists that there's going to be reprisals because there often are. I mean, talking about Norm, it's a guy who did some work to get a paycheck, was in effect put on lists. They wouldn't hire him. There was a joke going, well, it wasn't a joke, but there was a comment going around the comics industry creators I talked to going, the next time he gets DC work printed will be his obituary. And and then he died, and that was the next work that was printed. It was sad.
So this is my point. Back to politics, briefly mentioned. Here's the only politics I hope people ever pull from my work. I'm corporate skeptic. You know what I mean? That's it.
I'm with you, brother.
So that is to say that I don't think that people should never take Marvel or DC work. I'm not on some, like I love my creator-owned work and I love that world. And frankly, for all the problems that people might express about publishers like Image, I'm here to be on the other side of that and tell you, like, okay, look, there's a lot of market-related things that we can talk about in terms of like how does a creator survive, all of that. We can talk about all of that. But in terms of my particular freedoms having the potential to reach the most amount of people, it's like, but this is that whole world. I don't begrudge you, although Marvel and DC, I don't begrudge you. If there's an opportunity, you take it if it's the right one for you, right? Or if it's just a thing you want to experience.
Yeah.
But you have to work. You have to enter a corporate job with the understanding that you're going to get fired from or let go from that corporate job. And if you enter that corporate job with this, I'm a company man, I'm going to be here for, firstly, you're a fucking fool. And secondly, well, that's not how they want you to even think of them. You know what I mean? Like, so
it's very true.
Like, the people that I know who are most successful in life have no loyalties, right? And now that's not good necessarily, right? Like that maybe they have loyalties to their family and they prioritize their family and they'll do whatever. But the people that I've met who are really successful, I'm going to do this job until I do the next job. And then I'm going to do the next job. And there's something to that. It's
being ethical, though. What you're describing is, you get a job, you do your job well because it's the right thing to do. That's different from loyalty to a corporation that can't return the favor. And not to tie it all the way back to your comic, Don't Avert Your Eyes on Kickstarter. You want to do something that would be problematic, or at least not necessarily problematic. That word's too loaded, but you wouldn't reach the right market in the DM. So
problematic in the utility of the actual word, which is
exactly not in the new Twitter language of it.
Yeah, right, exactly.
But you wanted to have the reach a bigger audience. You went to a place where that bigger audience is. That's being in control of your work. And I think when people talk about the big two and going indie, they talk about control in the artistic sense, and there is definitely that part of it, being able to do creatively what you want to do. But there's also, I think, benefit to being in control of your business, the steps you take in making your own decisions that are hugely valuable, as opposed to having faith that the corporation will just forever take care of you.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've seen too many brilliant people put their faith in a thing that, I mean, okay, not to get heavy, but what's a corporation? A corporation is individuals deferring responsibility by collectivizing under this idea that, hey, should anything go wrong, there's this superstructure that insulates me, it indemnifies me as the individual. That's what a corporation is, right? Now we could get into shareholders and infinite growth and these ideas that don't necessarily work, right? But at the end of the day, it is it's indemnifying the individual against the actions of the collective, right? So it is, hey, you know, Perch, you've done great work for the company, and we're grateful for your role here for so many years. You understand that this isn't my call. I would keep you here forever. You know what I mean? I know you just had a grandchild. You know, whatever it is, right? And but it's not my call. You know, it's
True.
hey, we're doing a corporate restructuring, and this is the thing. I'm not saying that any person at any of these companies, these corporations and corporately owned media companies like Marvel, DC, I'm not saying any of these people are bad people. I don't know them personally, except for the ones that I do. And people, I wouldn't even throw the term bad people at workers who are maybe stuck in a situation, right? So I wouldn't even apply that sort of language to them. But this is all to say that it is, you are put in a situation where you have to act in an almost sociopathic sort of fashion on behalf of your what do they call them in what do they call
what's
that?
Your corporate overlord for all intents and purposes.
I lost sight of what do they call them in feudal Japan? But so you are, you know, if I love samurai comics, and if you the whole thing at the end of the day is I fell out with corporate. That is what samurai comics are, right? It's I fell out with corporate and now I'm solo.
You're rolling now. Yeah.
And there's a lot to be said with just that idea, right? That idea that this is not someone or something you can rely on. So why are you relying on it? And I just think that creators, again, this is I'm not trying to sloganeer on your show. It's just to say that I don't see. Okay, I'm going to talk about a publisher that's not the one that seems obvious. To be honest, I'm going to talk about a publisher talking about the broader sensibilities of the creators of this moment, but don't read into it. I've had relationships with 4 publishers, and it might not even be any of them. but
mystery speak. Here we go.
Yeah, exactly. Broad. So just some broad vagueness here. This person was expressing to me that they're having real problems with the current generation of creators because they're not independently minded at all. They see the stamp of approval from major corporations as part and parcel to their climb to wherever they're going, right? And this publisher doesn't know what to do with that mindset because this individual doesn't see the world through that lens, right? And there's people, I've heard you wave your Gen X banner, and there's something there. That's a conversation for sure. But there's always people that are going to be corporate-minded individuals who want to exist within a system and see it to their benefit. And look, that's a lot of the listeners here, right? A lot of the listeners work for major corporations. That's how the United States works. And maybe they don't wish that they could be independent contractors because they've seen the headaches that come on that side of things, and they have families, and so this is not about judgment. Although again, some of these individual creators need to step up and say, I'm not being allowed to do good work. I have to pursue good work. But it's not about judgment. It's just to say that what are you supposed to do for someone that'll take any order? Do you know what I mean? Like what creatively, what can we get from someone that will march to whatever the emperor is drum is beaten that day? You know what I mean? Like you almost can't rely on that person. That person might be a good soldier for your corporate army, but I'm here to read good comics, so I don't know what that does for me. You know what I mean?
People are going to hate this analogy, but here goes anyway. So if you look at the big two are motivated in many cases a lot more like McDonald's and Burger King are motivated. Their goal is volume. Their goal is to some extent consistency and timeliness. If you put it in an order, you're going to get it back in 5 minutes. A lot of artists are hating this analogy completely, but that is at the end of the day where they make their money. They're not a boutique, bespoke, restaurant where somebody is making a unique dish. And so I do think there's a little bit of a conflict in comics where a creative person like a chef, if you're going to work for McDonald's, you're going to be rated on how quickly you're able to get that burger out, not is it a good burger. I mean, it has to be good enough that it's not going to come back, but that's much different than selling a $25 Kobe beef crafted burger. Again, not a perfect analogy, but the big corporations are intending to they're playing a volume game. It's completely different than doing kind of unique good work.
Well, yes, and there was a few years ago, Image saw maybe a moment. This is nothing I've discussed with Image, so if I'm talking out of turn, respectfully to my emperors over there, who I got a lot of respect for, but they saw an opportunity. The big two was a little weak, and Image had a lot of energy around it, and they put a lot on the shelves, right? And there was that moment where Image was, by volume, competitive with Marvel and DC, and they've pulled back from that somewhat, right? Yeah. And I don't think that has everything to do with market realities necessarily. I think it also has to do with quality control. Yeah. And I think that there is something to be said for quality control, and not what's the is it a Gerber book? Maybe it is Destroy. Maybe it's Destroy a Duck. Maybe it's my second Destroy a Duck reference. Acquire all creation is the motto of the corporation in that, right? And that's kind of the game that's being played with shelf space by Marvel and DC. It's acquire all creation. And there's actually a military strategy or I guess just truth, right? It's called area denial, which is you just take space so that the other guy can't have it. Mm-hmm. And it's worthless space, you know what I mean? Like, and it's so. You want a little juice, a little red meat for the.
Oh, people are probably loving this part of it already, but yeah, go ahead.
So, one of my few meetings at the big two, and I'm just going to speak very, very vaguely out of respect for all parties involved.
That's good. Yeah.
But I thought that this was telling, and this was there was something to this that was informative. They said, "Well, this is what we got coming up." This editor, I'm a person that you can speak to honestly. I'm not. I'll hear you out. I listen to Nutballs on the bus. Do you know what I'm saying? Like I.
Well, you listen to this show, so yeah.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So. And I don't get mad at anybody's personal views or politics, regardless of how, I just don't have that type of, I think it's Baruch Spinoza. There's a quote that is basically, I'm not here to judge people. I'm here to understand them. Right. And I try to live that to the best of my ability. Now everybody fails at that. Right. But to the best of my ability, I try. And so I try to listen to people, and as a result, people usually give me pretty honest, or at least their idea of honest things. And this editor was saying, so we've got our first wave of books, and then they're going to follow up with the second, less marquee characters. This, by the way, I can keep this vague because this was now a few years ago and whatever. But
yeah, you've described both publishers.
Yeah, exactly.
As well,
exactly. Yeah. So, and this editor was very honest. These books will likely die quick deaths. And I said, just because we're talking honestly, can I ask you, why are you putting those books out? right? Like, why are you putting books out that are going to have a quick death? And his or her answer was, well, and this is a good answer. Sometimes you catch lightning in a bottle, and sometimes you do. Sometimes the creative team gels in a way that you never expected, and it's a success. And then the dark answer came, which was to justify. I'm going to be honest with you. To justify staff, we have to. If we cut too many books, we then have to cut staff. And I like everyone that works here. Yeah. And okay. That's the first time that I really put it together that this is there's so many things happening that have nothing to do with art. You know what I mean? Like obviously you're not a boob. You understand that business is business, but it never occurred to me that there are people who are employed because a certain volume of dead on arrival books are making it to shelves, and that's the only reason that they maintain employment. That never occurred to me. And before your listeners, I've read comment sections. Before your listeners judge that too harshly, I'm there. I think that needs to end, and I think that we need we need to sharpen the steel a little bit, right? At least, but be sympathetic to people who need their job as much as you need your job. That's all I'm going to say about that, because I think that that's stupid and needs correction. But to the 24-year-old junior editor who might go on to do great things, but is only kept in the mix by virtue of this very stupid, unwieldy system that exists just to keep a junior editor employed, well, that's really tough. That person might go on to be the next great editor. That person, and to cut them out now, maybe there is a rationale, maybe there is a science here. I don't know, but I'm just asking because, like I said, I read comment sections and people talk about other people's jobs in a way that they would never accept someone talking about their job. You know what I mean?
It's true. Yeah, everybody's very, very cold-hearted when it's somebody else's job, for sure.
Yes. And look, to a degree, I get it, right? Like sometimes shit is just like politics. You can look at a guy and say, yeah, you got to get the fuck out. You know what I mean? Like it just is what it is. You go find a career in some other field. You're a capable person. This is not it. Like that's sometimes that's just what it is. But I try to be delicate because I understand that, you know, particularly people with families, it's rough. Like, but
it's far from the greatest sin. I mean, there's a lot of reasons, like you said, and I've heard the multiple shots on goal excuse used a lot. Of hey, you know, to get one hit, we got to do 20 bad hits, and
which when you state it like that, it makes less sense, right? Because I can tell you that if I don't know my soccer players. Let's say if we kick it to Messi, there's a better chance of shot on goal being successful than if I kick it to Patrick Kindlon. You know what I'm saying? Because Patrick's never played soccer, and Messi seems good at it. So I think you can make while that there's
a Moneyball approach. It's we don't have, for whatever reason, we don't want to take the risk of giving, you know, a Walt Simonson or a John Byrne $1,000 a page. So what we're going to do is do 10 books with people who are making, you know, $100 a page or maybe $80 a page. And then somehow that will, you know, if one of those hits, then we're better off on our investment. That's the logic. I think it's extremely flawed logic. And I think it doesn't work for this field. It does work if you're baking burgers at McDonald's. It doesn't so much work for creative exercises, but here we are anyway. So.
Right. And look, I'm a guy who I've published a number of books at a few publishers. I'm proud of my work, but I'm no name. And I need editors to take a shot on people like me all the time. So I don't want to talk myself out of a job by being like, why are you hiring these no names? You know what I mean? Like That's not what I'm trying to do. Because it is a natural fact that sometimes great things come from unexpected places, and you have to give people an opportunity to rise to the occasion. Although that brings us to the other conversation that's very tricky and nonstop, which is why are people with no experience getting hired? And that's an interesting one and a difficult one to talk around. For obvious reasons, because people presume the worst of each other, right? Like, but for myself, I don't think that you have to judge everything that you acknowledge. So if you acknowledge that, hey, there's seemingly a lot of low experience or no experience people being hired, you can acknowledge that and then say, is that good or is that bad? And you can work through it. Right. But if we can't acknowledge it, and it is a fact, which it appears, I haven't crunched the data on this, but it appears that it's a fact. We shouldn't have to fear acknowledging it because of what someone might take and run with, right? Like, you and I aren't responsible for the worst possible actor in listening to this and saying, I'm so mad at these no experience hires. I'm going to wage a campaign. It's got nothing to do with me. I'm simply saying,
right.
It seems to be a thing. And what does that mean? Is there a reason? Is there a good reason? That's the other thing. People are never honest about this part. You can acknowledge a thing. You can dislike a thing. And you can still say, do I understand the rationale that the other party has? Right. Yeah. And that doesn't make you an apologist to say, I think I understand where they're coming from. I don't arrive at the same conclusion myself. Right. It's called being an adult. So is there a reason that we would hire no experienced people? Well, I've heard from editors, hey, do you like this character? Well, I'll be honest with you. It seems cool, but I don't know a lot about him. That's perfect. We'll keep you in the mix because we want somebody that knows nothing about this character. Yep. And it's like, why is that? Well, it's because the last 20 people that we tapped to do this book were doing what felt like homages and felt like old home week and felt like it was all seen before. We're looking for somebody that doesn't have an emotional connection to the character. Now, a lot of your listeners hear exactly what I just said, which is a true fact, and they take it in a spirit. They take it in these editors so don't value me as a reader that they are trying to undermine. They're trying to undermine that relationship that I have with this character. They don't give a fuck. And frankly, you should be honest. It's a corporate entity. They don't give a fuck. Like you got to be honest with yourself about that. Just be an adult about that fact, right? But lost my train of thought. I apologize.
No, I like what you're saying because I think I've been tilting at this windmill for years. So it is. You can understand a decision without liking a decision. You can understand the logic behind it without saying it's good. And in fact, I think you kind of have to struggle to understand decisions if you want to live in an adult world. It doesn't mean everything you understand you have to approve of.
So I'm going to wander into some pretty uncomfortable waters for a lot of people, but like the when people make it about identity, right? Like race and gender and all this, sure. And they say, well, why did they hire this person with low experience or no experience to do this book? It's clear that it's because of their race or their gender or whatever. And firstly, let's be fair. They didn't just exit the building. They didn't exit Marvel headquarters, grab somebody on the sidewalk and pull them in. That person made the radar for some reason. Right?
Come in here. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like let's just be honest about. Like you can say that they're low experience or they're maybe they don't seem like they know comics or whatever, but they made the radar for some reason, and we can be critical of that. That's a separate conversation. If you made the radar for doing poetry, maybe you and I feel like, well, those aren't really transferable skills. But that's a separate conversation. The conversation is is it, okay, so you grabbed a person to do the book because of their identity. Is that good or is that bad? Well, different people can make judgments on that. But what I think is unfair is when people say it's fucked up that they would hire this person when there's other good, enter the identity, like black, let's say. There's other good black writers. Why would they hire this person who has no experience? And I think that you're having two conversations without knowing it.
I agree. I completely agree with where you're going with this.
So when we say, why don't they hire Priest to do this, right? He's a great writer. He's had some high peaks, and he is a black man. Why don't they hire this guy, right? Why don't they hire any of the men of his generation who are brilliant writers, who are still fully capable? You're having two conversations. That man is being boxed out because of his age and familiarity. That's the reason he's being boxed out. Yeah. And the reason and the fact that he is black is superseded to these editors often, again, I'm speaking broadly, by the fact that he's old. You understand?
You're 100% right, by the way.
So, which is, by the way, another reason that creators have to start making their own way, is because when you're put out to pasture, trust me, I got friends who are fucking 40 who the phone does not ring anymore. Think about that bullshit. You had a hit 6 years ago, and now the phone's not ringing anymore. So here's the thing. So they hired this low experienced writer. Why didn't they hire my favorite black writer from the generation before? And it's like, well, who are they hiring from the generation before? You know what I mean? Like, and this takes us into sorry, I'm bouncing from one topic to another. You can tell that I've watched too many YouTube videos, and now I'm like, oh, I'm gonna hit every topic. But
we started with Amber Heard, but I'm with you.
Yeah. But the old person sensibility that you got to be sympathetic to this too. Whenever I see, and look, everybody in the comment section, I have as much respect for Chris Claremont as anybody could. The man, I do not love his X-Men the way that many people in the comment sections who are going to be flaming me love his X-Men. I think it is a high point, and in some ways a unbeaten point. It is an impressive feat. That said, I think he is dense even for the era. And I think that it can be, you have to be committed issue to issue in a way. Yeah. Man, I respect a lot, but not my favorite writer. But back to the point is, you can't just keep yelling in the comment section of everything, bring back Claremont. It's not going to happen for a variety of reasons. And we also have to be fair to a 25-year-old editor who has no emotional connection to Claremont. And frankly, his style seems like it's from another era now. And there's three things. First, as an editor, I didn't discover this person. What's my incentive, right? Yep. I didn't discover this person. I didn't put this person on. It's not a feather in my cap to find one of the geniuses of all time and cut him a check. You know what I mean? That's
the obvious thing. You don't get credit for it. It's right, true. Exactly. It's maybe screwed up that's true, but it is true.
Sure. So I'm not getting the accolades for that, for finding him. B, I have my own anxieties that his style will not resonate with the current audience. Okay, so now your editor has two reasons to discount you. Third reason, he knows what he's worth. You know what I mean? so there's three reasons that guy's not getting the work. Now, we can, in comment sections, call for people to get hired again. I'm shocked when people shit on Peter David. I'm like mind blown, right? Like, and there's a lot of
Somebody who also needs your money right now, by the way, for people listening to this, go fund Peter David.
So go fund Peter David. So Peter David, a lot of the Image guys do not like the Image crew of dudes don't necessarily like him because he was a loudmouth about Image at the time, right? Now I love Image and I don't agree with that man's sentiments on that. Nor do I agree on whatever shit he was talking about in Hungary or whatever the fuck a few years ago. But here's my point.
The curse of the Romani, yes.
Right, yeah, exactly. But that man is a good writer, a great team book writer, great. Like almost perfection, to be honest. If anybody wants to study comics and like, oh, I care about superhero comics, what is it? X Factor 72, maybe 71, maybe 71. It is an actual perfect book. If you took beat for beat that particular issue, you could write the first issue of a television or the first episode of a television show. You could write the first issue of any fucking team comic. It is if you really break it down, it's a perfectly constructed thing, right? And I don't love his Hulk the way other people do because I don't like the direction it took. The Pantheon was of no interest to me. Whatever. But the point is that he's still sharp. Now, granted, he's followed his own muses at times, and his creator-owned work is of no fucking interest in me. But as a big two writer, he's an upper echelon guy that sometimes gets treated like a worker, which is fucking crazy. But the point is, Peter David love aside, is Peter David might he might need the money now, it seems, but he probably knows what he's worth and won't work for less than that. That's fair, right? Mm-hmm. And also, they don't want, I mean, a 25-year-old editor, let's be honest. And they're not all 25, obviously, like, some are older 30s, yes. Yeah, a lot of them are in the mid or late 30s, some of the DC guys, et cetera. But when you're looking for energy around a thing, you're going to be going for a youthful, I'm trying to make my name, I'm trying to establish something. And that editor wants somebody that mirrors that energy, right? Sure. So like, I want somebody that's young, plugged in, maybe knows more than me about cool shit, and also is not, respectfully, a 58-year-old man with a gut. You know what I mean? And look, as a musician, I can say this. Nobody wants to. I saw Guns N' Roses the other day. It was a horror. It was a fucking nightmare from hell. And
on all the fronts, I say I'm loving Guns N' Roses. Growing up with Guns N' Roses, going to see Guns N' Roses about 3 years ago was sad, both for the crowd and the band.
This was. I couldn't believe what I was looking at. I'll send you some clips. But it was. But the thing is, people want Axl 1989.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. And they'll take, if they had that memory, they'll take Axl now, right? Although this is not a good comparison because Peter David is still capable and Axl is frankly not. Slash is a better comparison. Slash is a better comparison because Slash can still play. So, but the point is, if you're a young person, you want someone that looks like you. And when I say young person, I mean under 30. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I mean by that. I mean, like somebody that is.
I hear you. And they're told to do that, by the way. Sure. Their bosses are telling them to take this route. So it's a harder situation I think people give it credit for. But, right. Nuance and all these details do not make for good comments in a YouTube comment.
No, that's true. But everybody thinks that you can just back up the Brinks truck and like let's get Claremont on, and also let's get Jim Lee. You know what I mean? It's like, what are we talking about? Firstly, respectfully to Jim Lee, I don't think he wants to do a monthly book. You know what I mean? So like, what are we when we're like
good? I think at this point, but yeah.
When we're like, let's put Jim Lee on the book. It's like, Jim Lee, we got to give some of these guys credit, right? These guys have critics. Jim Lee has his critics right now, but people still care when he draws something. Do you know how rare that is?
No, it sells books.
That's rare, man. Because the other thing is, I mean, I think you've talked about this on your channel, is when they take these old creators, and when I say old, we're talking about guys that are 52.
Yeah.
They're not that old. You know what I mean? So, but when we take these old creators and we give them books at the Big Two. It is often a pocket universe. Remember the good old days. Sort of
nostalgia play, yeah,
right. And if the point is to keep the lights on and keep the machine running, some of these guys are actual perfection at that. And the idea that you would be like, no, but instead do a 4-issue thing that nobody will give a shit about except for your hardcore fans, is ultimately silly in my view. Because look,
it's true.
The Bendis is coming thing didn't pan out the way that they wanted it to, right?
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe it was just a bad fit. People tell me that the whatever the line of books that he was doing there, they tell me some of those were very interesting. But the Superman thing itself, it just didn't gel for what right? Like whatever reason. And that's another thing we got to be honest about. All of these guys that your viewers respect and have an appreciation for, they all brick occasionally. Nobody bats 1,000. You know what I mean? Like, so I don't jump on these guys like as soon as they have like a bad series. You know what I mean? It's like I watch baseball. People have bad series. Trust me. Like it fucking happens. So but take that formula. Take the Bendis is coming formula, which now they're going to be reticent to use, but do that for any number of these older creators in just a smaller, internal marketing sort of way, whatever, like in the books, and just try to get people pumped, and then let them deliver good books. It could work, but again, if these men and women know their value, then maybe they don't want to work for the fucking, they don't want to work for $70 or whatever it is. Now, Perch, I disagree with you on one thing. I've listened to your show where you slam the page rates at Marvel, and I have mixed feelings about that because I've seen work there that I don't think deserves any better, right? And that's
fair, yeah.
And that's one. Two is I've worked for free many times in my life. Sometimes you do it just for an opportunity to get to better your situation. So I don't begrudge somebody taking a low paid rate. And three, this is dark, maybe, right? But maybe it's not. Maybe it's just tradesman sort of talk. But I've had writers tell me that page rate sucks unless you can write a comic in 3 hours. You know what I mean? And
you're right. Yeah.
And look, if you're making whatever it is, $2,200 for 3 hours or whatever, it's that is a good rate.
Eric Larson made some comments everybody got pissed off about, which was, they were maybe ill-timed, insensitive comments. I think that's probably very true, but it was along the lines of, hey, you can make the current page rate work as an artist if you just spend 20 minutes per page.
Right.
And, that's the amount of worth I'm willing to give to it. And so the math works out at that rate. And it's like, sounds terrible, but okay. You made it work.
But he's a fascinating figure in a lot of ways because Larson is one of the last proper cartoonists working in mainstream comics. So what I mean is he's written and drawn at this point an absurd number of Savage Dragon comics, right? And people can like or dislike that work, but it's when he says he's coming from the old school mentality of this book gets out on time no matter how you feel about it, son. You know what I mean?
and I can respect that for sure. And anyway, he's got this huge run. You've got Dave Sim out there, but we won't talk about him. But anyway, it's
interesting that we that comics in general, it's to me that's the collective punishment is, we don't like what Dave Sim said, so you don't get to enjoy some of the best cartooning that's ever existed in the Western world. Sorry, you didn't do anything. Dave Sim said some things we don't agree with. You didn't do anything. Don't worry about you. But your sun is a little dimmer today. You don't get as much beauty in your life because we don't like what Dave Sims said. I hate that bullshit. Like,
absolutely.
But whatever Dave Sims said is between him and his parish priest. I don't give a shit. It is his work is almost. I would go so far, and I don't even love his work because it becomes incomprehensible, right? But
yeah. But you're right. Yeah, I mean, sorry, I'll let you finish. But yes, it is. He has done quite a lot. Yeah.
And as a cartoonist, he is actually operating on a higher level. And when we do this thing where we're like, don't like what he said, therefore, you know what? I'm gonna sound like a simple person. I'm gonna make it the Mona Lisa. You don't get to look at the Mona Lisa anymore. You know what I mean? And you're like, but wait, I don't have shit to do with, you know what I mean? I didn't do anything wrong. I don't think. I just want to look at a beautiful thing. And they're like, nah, not today. You know?
The museum is closed now. It is.
Yeah, right.
It's broken. I hate that. And I think it's destructive. It doesn't actually solve anything. I mean, it doesn't take away what he said. It doesn't change. It doesn't make what he said magically better because you can't look at the art anymore. So
that's actually, you and I are going to avoid this heavy conversation, but the utilitarian perspective on what does the most good, right? Currently not a popular thing because FTX just imploded, and Sam Bankman-Fried is kind of comes from that school of thought, and maybe although he has this weird prosperity gospel version of this, right? Like where it's like make as much money so you can do as much as good as you can, like whatever. This sort of nonsense that tech valley people are on. But but this utilitarian idea of what's the most good, right? Like that's what a lot of people say they subscribe to, right? Like that's how they would see the world, in some ends justify the means sort of fashion. I want to do the most good that I can, even if it's at the expense of an individual. I understand that that's a complicated, difficult conversation, but I'm willing to do things like. But then when it comes to, hey, anything Dave Sim has said it's so minute it is so outshone by his work that he has put out into this world as a craftsman. It is so like this will go away. The thing that he said will die with him. You know what I mean? Like, and any offense that he gave will die with the people who were offended.
It's true.
His work, and I don't say this about, I hear creators say that like, you know, my work's going to outlive me. No, it won't. Nobody gives a shit. But Dave Sim is different. And we have to acknowledge that there's maybe 10 guys whose work will legitimately live for as long as there's a Western canon, right? And Dave Sim is one of them. So when you're telling me, no, it's museum's closed. It's like, hey,
that's an absurd comment. It doesn't map to any kind of reality, and it is, you can't change human behavior. But we're definitely in that era right now where people are, you know, they're just not going to look at it that way. But the funny thing is, they can look at it however they want. The proof is going to be in the years to come.
Right.
No matter what is said, it's still going to be there. The work's still going to be there. It's still going to be remembered, and it won't inherently matter. When all is said and done, we'll just have deprived ourselves from a lot of art in the process.
So I'm saying, it's like, I'm not starving on another man's behalf. You know what I mean? Like that's just how I see the world. It's like, I didn't commit that man's crime. I'm not walking into a jail cell with him. I want to enjoy life and see great art. So don't stop standing in my way. But that's a heavier topic, obviously. But
look, we should do. So we should actually wrap, because people will stop listening about an hour and a half in. So we're past
I got you.
But that's okay. We should. Well, first of all, we didn't. There's so much more to talk about. I want to talk about the music and other things too. So, but we should have you come back. I would love if you could come back and talk to us some more. I think we should get Pat on here, and the three of us should chat. I think that'd be hilarious. But
no, I was getting in a lot of trouble at that point, because you take three guys who don't give a shit if they get a job again, and it's a problem.
I love it. No, we definitely should. Some of my happiest memories on this channel, we used to do live streams a long time ago. I don't know why I keep saying we when it's just me. I used to do live streams. But I would get Pat to guess the name of the manga title just by showing him the cover. And that remains one of my happiest memories of all time, because he would come up with the craziest shit. But anyway.
I would worry that I would trip into some cultural boo-boo where I faux pas whereas
Well, Pat didn't worry, so it was okay. So,
okay, very good.
We'll do it. But listen, for definitely, it's a Kickstarter is still open, so go check it out. So Don't Avert Your Eyes. It's Black Mask doing a
That's
Kickstarter.
Right.
It's very different from what you can find in the direct market, so you can get in there. It looks beautiful.
Thank you.
I love it.
Working again with artists that are from outside of my purview, and I feel lucky to have met some really talented people on this one. So it's thank you. It is a good looking book. That's the other thing I would like to start setting. No disrespect to the boob artists out there. I'd like, with some of the adult work that I'm going to be doing, I would like to be standard setting in some way moving forward. Like start really shaping that into a thing that commands respect, because it can't be denied.
And as you said at the beginning, full penetration. So go grab one.
Yeah, exactly. That's the selling. You know what? Let's end on that. The selling point is that there's full pen.
I love it. Patrick, thank you very much for all the time here. And definitely we got to come back to this again.
First, thank you for having me.